Today, the Mexican military killed the leader of the Jalisco, El Mencho.
Mexico is burning right now. 8 states, 12 highways, hundreds of burning cars. A city of 5 million people turned into a ghost town overnight, and you probably haven't heard a single word about it. But here's what I need you to understand. The most wanted gangster on the entire planet was just killed.
Most powerful cartel leader who has been killed.
The Mexican army says it has killed the leader of the country's most powerful drug cartel.
A man so dangerous, so powerful, that the FBI put a $15 million bounty on his head. A man who controlled the drugs poisoning American cities from Los Angeles to Chicago to New York. A man governments couldn't touch for over a decade. Gone, just like that. But who killed him? And why now? Why was the United States secretly involved in this operation? And what does that tell us about how desperate things have gotten? Why did Mexico erupt in violence the second he died?
He was one of the most wanted men in both Mexico and the United States.
And what does that mean for the 30 million Americans who buy goods that pass through Mexican ports every single day? And the question nobody wants to answer, now that he's gone, who takes over? And are they going to be even worse? This story is not about Mexico. This story is about you. To understand why Mexico is burning tonight, you have to understand where this man came from. Born July 17, 1966, in a tiny rural village called Culotitlan in the state of Michoacan. He dropped out of primary school. He picked avocados. He was nobody. Then he made a decision that would change everything. He crossed the border illegally into the United States. He ended up in California, and there he discovered the drug trade. By the 1990s, he was arrested in the U.S. for heroin trafficking. He served time in federal prison. He was deported back to Mexico. Most people would have stopped there. El Mencho didn't stop. He went back to Mexico and built an empire. In 2007, El Mencho co-founded the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. In Spanish, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, the CJNG. And unlike the old-school cartels that tried to stay hidden, El Mencho built his empire through one strategy: absolute terror. The CJNG didn't just traffic drugs. They shot down a military helicopter with a rocket launcher in broad daylight, on video, and posted it online. They weren't hiding anymore. They were broadcasting their power. Under El Mencho's command, the CJNG became responsible for the bulk of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and most critically for Americans, fentanyl, entering the United States. Think about that. Every fentanyl pill that killed someone in your city, your state, your family, a significant portion of that came through El Mencho's network. Here's what made El Mencho different from every other cartel boss the United States ever hunted. He was a ghost. While El Chapo gave interviews to Sean Penn and appeared on magazine covers, El Mencho disappeared. All known photographs of him were decades old. Nobody knew what he looked like. Nobody knew where he lived. For years, there were rumors he was sick. In 2020, it was reported he had severe kidney disease and had secretly built his own private hospital in a remote village just to treat himself. In 2022, intelligence reports said he hadn't been seen in years. Was he even alive? He was alive. He was hiding, and the US and Mexican governments were quietly getting closer. The break came from the most unexpected place: a woman. On February 20th, 2026, just 48 hours before his death, military intelligence tracked a trusted associate of one of El Mencho's romantic partners. She traveled to meet him in Tapalpa. She left. He stayed. The trap was set. February 22nd, Sunday morning. While Tapalpa slept, Mexico's special forces were already moving. The operation was a joint effort: Mexican Army Special Forces, the National Guard, the Mexican Air Force, the Attorney General's Office, and, crucially, American intelligence. The White House would later confirm the U.S. provided intelligence support. This was a coordinated binational kill mission. 6 military helicopters were deployed. Tejano Special Forces units moved in on the ground. The objective was to capture El Mencho, not kill him, but El Mencho's bodyguards were waiting. The CJNG security force opened fire. A firefight broke out. One of the military helicopters was forced to make an emergency landing. When the smoke cleared, 4 cartel operatives were dead at the scene. 3 others, including El Mencho, were critically wounded and airlifted by helicopter toward Mexico City. They never made it. Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, died from his wounds en route. The most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere was gone. Within hours of El Mencho's death being confirmed, Mexico descended into chaos. This is what happens when you kill the king. The CJNG activated simultaneously across the country. Gunmen set cars and trucks on fire, blocking highways in nearly a dozen states: Jalisco, Colima, Michoacán, Nayarit, Guanajuato, Tamaulipas. It was coordinated. It was terrifying. Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city with over 5 million people, became a ghost town overnight. Buses stopped running, stores closed, families locked their doors. At the airport in Puerto Vallarta, a city where thousands of American tourists were staying, eyewitnesses reported execution-style murders right outside the terminal. Videos showed people sprinting through the airport in full panic. The U.S. State Department issued urgent warnings. Americans in Jalisco, Tamaulipas, Michoacán, Guerrero, and Nuevo León, shelter in place. And then, the retaliatory attacks began against the military itself. You might be watching this from your couch in Ohio, or Texas, or Florida, and thinking, this is Mexico's problem. It's not. The CJNG under El Mencho was the single largest supplier of fentanyl into the United States. Over 100,000 Americans die of drug overdoses every year, and fentanyl is the #1 killer. That pipeline ran directly through El Mencho's organization. And there's more. The CJNG also controlled significant human smuggling operations. The same routes used for drugs were used to move people across the border. A crisis the current administration has made its #1 priority. The White House confirmed the U.S. provided intelligence support for the operation. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, and I quote, "President Trump has been very clear. The United States will ensure narco-terrorists sending deadly drugs to our homeland are forced to face the wrath of justice they have long deserved."
Every terrorist thug smuggling poisonous drugs into the United States of America, please be warned that we will blow you out of existence. We have no choice.
U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau called El Mencho one of the bloodiest and most ruthless drug kingpins and said the operation was a great development for Mexico, the U.S., Latin America, and the world. This was not just a Mexican victory. This was an American one too. Here's something the news will never show you. El Mencho wasn't just a drug lord. He was a CEO. The CJNG generated billions of dollars annually across 6 criminal industries at once. First, drugs. Cocaine from Colombia and Peru, fentanyl precursors sourced from China, meth cooked in Mexican labs, distributed to the United States, Canada, Australia, Europe, and across Southeast Asia. All 50 U.S. states, every major continent, one cartel running a global pharmaceutical empire, except nothing they sold was legal. Second, the ports. The CJNG controlled Mexico's single busiest container port, Manzanillo, Colima. Over 3.5 million shipping containers move through Manzanillo every year. That port connects Mexico to Asia, Europe, and South America. Every container is a potential smuggling opportunity. And for years, the CJNG owned the port, customs officials on payroll, shipments waved through without inspection. Third, fuel theft. The CJNG tapped directly into Pemex, Mexico's state-owned oil company, stealing crude oil from pipelines and selling it across the border. The U.S. Treasury confirmed this network generates hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Fourth, in a move you won't believe, timeshare fraud. The CJNG ran sophisticated call centers in Puerto Vallarta staffed with English-speaking telemarketers targeting elderly Americans, stealing their life savings through fake timeshare sales. The U.S. Treasury sanctioned these operations as recently as February 2026. And fifth, money laundering. Shell companies, real estate purchases, international wire transfers across multiple jurisdictions. In just 4 months after a single U.S. Treasury alert, financial institutions filed reports flagging over $827 million in suspicious transactions between the U.S. and Mexico. So when El Mencho died on February 22nd, it wasn't just a cartel boss who fell. It was a multinational criminal corporation that lost its founder. And that corporation, with tentacles in 6 continents and annual revenues in the billions, is now leaderless. The global economic impact is already rippling outward. Manzanillo, shut down within hours of El Mencho's death. Every hour that port is closed costs the Mexican economy millions, and freight brokers along the U.S.-Mexico border are already reporting spiking trucking rates as supply chains scramble. Mexico's peso dropped immediately. Markets in Mexico City opened down, and analysts are warning that a prolonged CJNG power struggle could destabilize the entire Mexican investment environment, threatening the hundreds of billions of dollars in nearshoring investment that U.S. companies have poured into Mexico since 2020. Apple, Tesla, GM, Amazon, they all have major manufacturing and logistics operations in Mexico. A destabilized Mexico is a destabilized American supply chain. The drug war just became a Wall Street problem too. Here is the hardest truth about taking down the most powerful cartel boss in the world. Killing the king doesn't end the kingdom. El Mencho left behind no clear successor. His son, who was seen as the heir apparent, is sitting in a U.S. federal prison. His stepson, known as El Pelon, was considered the de facto second in command. But analysts say the line of succession is broken, unclear, and dangerous. And here is what history tells us about what comes next. In 2024, Mexican authorities captured Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the co-founder of the Sinaloa cartel. What followed was not peace, it was civil war within the cartel. Factions turned on each other. Violence erupted across Mexico for months. Now, analysts are bracing for the same thing inside the CJNG. And then there's the external threat. The Sinaloa cartel, El Mencho's longtime rival, will see this as an opportunity. A weakened CJNG means open territory, open routes, open ports. Ecuador, Colombia, the cocaine supply chain that the CJNG controlled could fracture. Regional violence could spike across Latin America. The ripple effects of what happened in that small mountain town on Sunday morning are just beginning. One man is dead, but the machine he built, that machine is very much alive, and now it has no driver. What happens in the next 90 days in Mexico could reshape drug trafficking in the Americas for a generation. February 22nd, 2026 will go down as one of the most consequential days in the history of the war on drugs. An avocado farmer from Michoacán, who became the world's most powerful drug lord, is dead. Shot in a firefight in the mountains he thought would protect him. Tracked down by a woman he trusted. Taken down by the armies of 2 nations. But America, this is not over. The fentanyl crisis did not die with El Mencho. The cartels did not die with El Mencho. The routes, the tunnels, the networks, they are still there. The question now is, who picks up the crown? And what are they willing to do to keep it? Stay informed, stay aware, and remember, everything you see on the news has a story behind it. Today, you heard the full one.